The day I inherited my late uncle's estate, I expected an old house, a pickup truck, and a stack of paperwork. Instead, my attorney unfolded a county survey map and quietly pointed to a shaded section beside the neighborhood. "Daniel," he said, "you don't just own the ranch. According to this deed, you inherited 50% of the HOA's so-called common land." I thought there had to be some mistake. The attorney slid the original deed across the table, along with decades-old land records. Every legal description matched perfectly. Half of the neighborhood's greenbelt had never been transferred to the HOA. It had remained with my family's ranch all along. Curious, I drove straight to property. Families were walking their dogs. Children were playing near the picnic area. And the HOA entrance proudly displayed a sign calling it Community Common Land. I smiled quietly because the paperwork in my truck told a very different story. The next morning, I hired a licensed survey company to verify every property line before making any decisions. If I was going to claim ownership, I wanted every measurement backed by official records, not assumptions. 2 days later, the survey crew delivered their report. Every stake, every coordinate, and every official document confirmed the same conclusion. Nearly half of the land the HOA had been maintaining for years legally belonged to me. I had no intention of causing trouble, but I knew this conversation with the HOA board was going to be unforgettable. I requested a meeting with the HOA board and brought copies of every survey, deed, and county record. I wasn't looking for an argument. I simply wanted everyone to see the facts before jumping to conclusions. As soon as I explained why I was there, several board members exchanged amused looks. Rebecca leaned back in her chair, smiled confidently, and said there was no chance a private citizen could own part of the HOA's common area. Without raising my voice, I placed a certified survey on the table. Every boundary marker, every parcel number, and every county seal matched the original deed recorded decades earlier. Rebecca insisted the documents had to be wrong because the HOA had maintained the land for years. I politely explained that maintaining property doesn't automatically transfer legal ownership. Before leaving, I thanked everyone for their time and mentioned that my attorney would send a formal letter outlining the ownership records. The room grew noticeably quieter as I walked toward the door. 3 days later, my attorney mailed a formal legal notice to the HOA. It included certified copies of the original deed, the county survey, and a professional opinion explaining that my ownership interest had never been legally transferred. When the HOA board received the letter, the mood changed immediately. What had started as laughter quickly turned into a serious discussion as they realized the documents came directly from county records. The board hired its own survey company to verify the boundaries independently. A week later, their report reached the exact same conclusion. The property lines matched mine almost perfectly. An independent real estate attorney explained that ownership and maintenance were two different legal concepts. The HOA had cared for the land, but that alone didn't change who legally owned it. After reviewing every document, my attorney prepared an itemized invoice covering decades of landscaping, maintenance coordination, and legal expenses related to the privately owned portion of the land. It wasn't about revenge. It was about opening negotiations based on the documented ownership interests. The HOA's attorney requested a private meeting before responding to the invoice. Rather than rushing into a dispute, both sides agreed to review every document together. For the first time, everyone focused on finding a practical solution instead of arguing over assumptions. The legal review lasted several hours. Every survey, county record, and historical plat confirmed the same boundary lines. Even the HOA's attorney admitted the ownership documents appear to be accurate. Instead of demanding immediate payment, I proposed a different solution. If the neighborhood wanted to continue using the shared green space, we could negotiate a long-term agreement that protected everyone's interests. The proposal surprised the entire board. Rather than creating conflict, it offered stability. The neighborhood could keep enjoying the land while my ownership rights would finally be recognized in writing. After several rounds of discussion, both sides agreed to continue negotiations. As I drove home that evening, I realized this had never been about winning. It was about making sure decades-old property rights were finally understood and respected. Over the next few weeks, attorneys for both sides drafted a formal shared use agreement. The document recognized my ownership interest while allowing residents to continue enjoying the park exactly as they always had. The HOA board voted to approve the agreement during a special meeting. This time, the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of laughter, the room was filled with thoughtful discussion and mutual respect. A few days later, both parties signed the final documents at the county records office. Decades of uncertainty were finally replaced with clear legal boundaries that everyone could rely on. The updated county records officially reflected the corrected ownership information. From that day forward, there would be no confusion about who owned the land or how it would be managed. That weekend, families gathered in the neighborhood park just as they always had. Children played on the playground, neighbors walked their dogs, and the green space remained open for everyone to enjoy. Now with its ownership clearly documented. Several months later, the county planning department invited our neighborhood to share the story during a community property rights workshop. The goal wasn't to revisit the disagreement. It was to demonstrate how accurate records and respectful communication can resolve complex ownership questions. Professional surveyors explained how historical deeds sometimes remain unchanged for generations unless they are formally transferred. Many attendees were surprised to learn how easily ownership assumptions can differ from official county records. Following the workshop, several neighboring communities requested copies of the shared use agreement as a reference for their own properties.